There are changes from first to the second, from 7 to the 8, but are they massive? The big, massive thing from Harman Kardon, if you're going to buy the speaker and you'll be interested in, is what they call self-tuning. There's nothing groundbreaking here. They've now got 2 mics. The mics will listen to the acoustics of the room and will make a guess at what's happening. Is it reverberant? Is there a build-up of bass? What JBL and the likes are already doing in their cinema range, they've now implemented in this home Bluetooth speaker, and it promises some compensation. It's not like it's going to add 20 decibels of bass or do massively different things. It's being presented in that way. I've seen that online a lot and in the marketing. But even in the home cinema, it's a little bit more subtle than that. So they're promising a lot. The headline difference is really the self-tuning. What do they say? Enjoy perfect. I mean, this you know, people obviously go for this, but not you and me. Enjoy perfect sounds. Define perfect. Wherever you take the music, when you power on, the Onyx Studio 8 automatically calibrates to its environment, and here's the problem number 1. It's not a feature you can turn on or off. You may like to predict what your speaker is going to do, and if it's as good as they're saying, you won't be able to, because it's going to do some auto calibration on what it thinks the room should sound like, ensuring. And it's only got 2 mics. There's only so much. It's not like a lot of these home cinemas where they're putting out beams and it's coming back. This is only calibrating, as far as I can see, while you're actually playing music. How much calibration can you do over the top of that with 2 front-facing mics, I believe? Ensuring the best sound possible no matter where you sit it down. Well, that's marketing bullshit. We know that. It's going to sound, they're saying it will sound different in different rooms. We can test for that. How can you do that, Alan? I'm going to tell you. I've got, where I normally do my recordings is what they call a dead room. Hardly any reverberation, hardly any reflections, and a ton of bass treatment to stop any build-up of bass. I'm trying to just capture what the speaker is doing. It doesn't that now. That's about accuracy of what the speaker is doing, and trying to measure that frequency. Because as you notice, I do a lot of graphs. My personal interest, why I sit here, apart from I enjoy doing YouTube, why I do this sort of thing on YouTube, I want to know exactly what the speaker is doing, and not someone else's opinion, or hearing their room modes. I want to know. I want to take out everything except what the speaker is actually doing. That's why it's not perfect, but for me, I'm getting as close as I can to removing the room and just hearing the speaker. And that's what you'd call a dead room. Is it a good room to listen to a speaker in? No, it's not. But it's a good place to record. It's sort of where you would do your mixing. It's going to be even deader than that. But that's where you'd be going. But in a listening room, what you call a well-treated room would be much more reverberant than that, because you need that for imaging. So when I talk about a dead room and a live room, my live room will have some diffusion. That's all I've got in my what I'm calling my live room, and it's good for listening. But depending on how lively you want that room. Not all rooms, of course. You go to live venues, there's hardly any acoustic treatment, and it's a completely different sound, and it still sounds great. And that's what sound is all about: enjoying the moment and in the right environment. I know I've waffled again. I think this is a really interesting point to me. This is something I've been trying to do from the start. Use a dead room, and it's not something that gets talked about much, because they're making big claims. Can now demonstrate what happens in different rooms with the same speaker. So I'm going to start by the Onyx Studio 8, recorded in my dead room, recorded in my live room. Let's see if we're getting any bass compensation, any high compensation for the extra bass build-up you're going to get in the live room, and for the extra, it's more reflective. So you're getting more of the sound coming back on the speaker, more peaks and nulls, more reverberation to your ears. Let's have a look what the speaker in the real world is doing. tell me, wow, do you know what? It really has changed the sound. Getting more bass. Oh, and it sounds, there's more of a shimmer to the sound. I like that, it's going on. Oh, but hang on a second. Are we listening to what the speaker's doing, or are we listening to the room? Every room has a sound. You should know that. Every room has its own room mode. So I can do exactly the same test with the Onyx Studio 7. And if we then minus the differences from the 7 and the 8, we can see, which will tell us the room, we can see what the Studio 8 is actually doing. So the same test, but the Onyx Studio 7, dead room versus live room. Comparing the 7 against the 8, we do see an advantage in the bass now for the Onyx Studio 8, but not adjusted for volume here. And if we look all along, we can see it is playing louder. This is 60% volume. It's playing louder on the Onyx Studio 8. We reduce that. There's going to be not much in it. But the main thing to take away is the differences. Like for like, 50 to 150 hertz the advantage to the Onyx Studio 8. And then it's playing louder, 400 hertz up. We go to the live room. Yes, the frequency response is now looking different because here we got acoustic treatment. We've got more bass now, not because anything magic has happened on the Onyx Studio 8. It's happening on both of the speakers, the Onyx Studio 7 and the Studio 8, both playing in a different way because it's a reverberant room now. Some treatment in this room, but it's still a live room. But the Onyx Studio 8 still has that same 150 hertz and down bass advantage, and the 400 hertz and up just playing a bit louder. The differences are exactly the same. What we do see is the differences in the room. Got a lot of bass treatment in my dead room, and we see 50 hertz, 55 hertz peak is way higher on the live room response. And you're thinking, oh, I'd rather have that. But in terms of accuracy, but if we look at the original track, we can see why acoustic treatment is so important for accuracy. We don't have a bass peak at the 50 hertz mark on the original track. It's the dead room that's giving us the accurate bass, but the live room sounding better. Yes, we got more bass. So the first thing to take away is we're not seeing any changes here between a dead room and a live room. There doesn't seem to be any adjustment on the so-called Onyx Studio 8 having some sort of auto EQ to adjust for different types of rooms. Two different rooms, response is the same because the 7 and an 8 are responding to that room in the same way. And we're seeing the differences in the room modes. And that's why there's a big difference in, do you want a room for audio accuracy, or do you want a room that just sounds livelier? It's going to sound a little bit better, depending on what you want. We've got more bass, we've got more reverberation going on, which can sound quite pleasant to the ears, but we've lost accuracy. And this shows you the room you make your recordings in can completely change the sound of the speaker. We're going to have better imaging in our live room. We're going to have better accuracy in our dead room. And there you have it. I didn't measure any difference in the Onyx Studio 8 other than the room. So we got to see the room modes and the difference between a dead room and a live room. But the differences were exactly the same for the 7 and the 8. So in my test, I didn't measure any differences. And so if there's anything going on, that's a big difference between those two rooms. I should have seen something obvious going on. And if it's doing anything, it's doing it in a subtle way. Remember, this is not something you can turn on and off. So as far as I can see, that's not a reason to buy the Onyx Studio 8. Let's see if anybody, including Harman themselves, can actually demonstrate a real difference in the real world. I challenge you, Harman. If anyone is actually, maybe a couple of cleaners are watching late night on YouTube. Somebody demonstrate, not on marketing, don't put it in the headlines, but demonstrate in the real world what that auto calibration is doing. And also that's interesting because when you get A/B comparisons against the recorded speaker and the original track. I do that, and I do that because I record in a dead room. So you've got to remember, whatever you're listening back on, and if for most of you it's probably headphones, but my recordings will work on speakers as well. It's layering on its own target response. Let's assume a reasonably neutral headphone is somewhere near the Harman target. The Harman target is a flat sounding speaker in a well-treated room with some user EQ added, but there's the point being, if you take a speaker that's recorded in a very reverberant room, let's supposing someone recorded their speaker in a living room with no acoustic treatment at all, and it's highly reverberant, and you've got to build up a bass, and then they lay that next to the original track and try and tell you whether that speaker is accurate or not. It's a complete nonsense, because that's more like, or sort of like a diffuse target, but most headphones are going to use some sort of Harman target. None of them are flat in the real sense, and you've got to go with what you think works. So that you'd have to pick a headphone that sounds like your room, their target response. For most people, it's going to be something based on the Harman target, and they're going to have a Harman target against something in a reverberant room. So they're not going to say, if everything was equal and the speaker was actually spot on, neutral, and it was absolutely being genuine to the original track, they would sound different in an A/B. I know this has got nothing to do really with actually giving a review on this, but this for me is an opportunity for something that's bugged me for a long time, is the problem of you hear recordings, and it's not in a dead room, it's in a reverberant room, and you're supposed to say, oh, that's what it sounds like. No, you're listening to the room. There's another complication here, and that is critical listening distance. That is the point at which the room becomes the influencing factor in what you hear over the speaker itself. If you're within a certain distance of the speaker itself, the room has less of so it's more about the direct sound, and you're getting more of what the speaker's doing. The further away you go, you're hearing more of the room. If they haven't even taken that into consideration, most of them don't. Again, I don't want to knock anyone. I'm just saying this is where I'm coming from, and I believe what I'm doing will be proven right in the long term. I've got to tinker like everyone else does to get it more and more right. But I'm coming from the right place in trying to just record the speaker. But the point there was, you better know this stuff if you're listening to someone playing a track recorded in not a really good room, and they're playing against the original to try and tell you if the speaker is accurate or not. That's a complete nonsense.